Hi, everyone. Like she was saying, my name is Zach Zimmerman. I'm with Education and Labor Cabinet, the Kentucky SAFE. We're the consultation branch of OSHA. Sure, most of y'all have become familiar with this over the last couple of years. But today I'm going to be presenting a training on slips, trips, falls, and some general housekeeping items. So if you have any questions throughout this, feel free to unmute and just let me know, and we'll see how this goes. All right, so first we have to start off all our trainings with this disclaimer, so just bear with me while I read through this. So this class is designed to assist you in complying with OSHA regulations. Because of the variations that can occur due to any on-site conditions and performance criteria, it is impossible for any course to cover every aspect of those potential variations. Therefore, this course does not cover everything a person should know about a particular subject, nor does it qualify anyone as a competent or qualified person. However, our courses do cover part of the information that any person must know to be effective in applying safety and health standards and practices to circumstances in the workplace. All right. So let's start off with this video. Like most safety trainings, we have to show some kind of grainy black and white workplace injury video. So check this out. All right, so that is an example of something we want to try to avoid, fall to a lower level. Yeah, that one's pretty bad. Some kind of behind the counter at a store or something. Things they could do to prevent that, communication, not open up floors in the, or holes in the floor while people are not looking at them. So we'll talk about some things like that and hopefully prevent that kind of injury in your workplace going forward. All right, so objectives for today. So first we'll go over some statistics, why this is important, how frequently we see these kind of injuries. Then we'll cover some terminologies, concepts. We'll talk about the workplace environment, what to do to make that safer. We'll talk about general requirements, housekeeping, what OSHA requires, what the actual regulations are. Then we'll do railing, stairs, ladders, regulations, safe practices for those. Finish up with some general safe practices, and then briefly how to fall down right. So why is this stuff important? Slips, trips, and falls are one of the leading causes of workplace injuries in the Commonwealth. The U.S. Department of Labor also says slips, trips, and falls are the most common workplace accident in the nation. So this is something that happens frequently, that can happen in any workplace, and they account for about 12 to 15% of all workers' compensation expenses. So they can be expensive, they can be really cause injuries to employees, and it's something that just happens a lot. Most common injuries that happen for slips, trips, and falls are fractures. This can be spine, hip, forearm, leg, ankle, pelvis, upper arm, and hand fractures. Accidents involving slips, trips, and falls send about 9 million people to the hospital each year. And again, leading cause of workers' compensation claims. And 38 days is the average number of days away from work for a slip, trip, or fall injury. So these are frequent. They can be serious. So just wanted to bear home on that point. So this is something that can seriously injure employees. So 1 in 6 of all lost time work injuries result from slips, trips, and falls. They make up about 20% of all job-related injuries. Almost 20,000 people die in the U.S. annually due to an injury caused from a fall. And from OSHA, slips, trips, and falls cause about 15% of all accidental deaths, and they account for 12 to 15% of all workers' compensation claims again. These injuries can cost about $40,000 per incident. So again, just to reiterate, expensive, frequent, can happen anywhere. So that's what we want to try to avoid, identify some hazards, common causes, and hopefully help you set your workplace up to avoid these going forward. All right, so moving on to terminologies and concepts. All right, so when we talk about slips, trips, and falls, what exactly are we talking about? What's the difference between them? Pretty common sense, but a slip is when there's too little traction between the shoe and the walking surface. So think about walking on a floor that has water on it, walking on ice. You just lose traction with the floor, slip, and then fall down. The difference between a trip is when a person's foot contacts an object in their way and causes them to drop to a lower level unexpectedly. So again, common sense, tripping on a cord left out, tripping on something coming out of a doorway in your exit path. And then falls, that's to drop or sink to a lower point, descend rapidly to tumble to the ground. With falls, we can break those down even further. So we have same level falls and then falls from elevation. So obviously same level falls is if you trip, fall to the same level you're working on, something like that. While fall from elevation is if you're working at heights and you fall down to a lower level. So falling from elevation is obviously much more likely to cause severe injury, but same level falls are more frequent. That's something people are exposed to more often. So they're both things we want to keep in mind and try to prevent. All right, so just in general, what is a hazard? This is any condition or behavior that can cause harm. So think about conditions. In this example, scaffolding plank, the condition is scaffolding plank is damaged, it's not in good shape, it's got some decay in the middle. And then the behavior is the person not inspecting the scaffolding, climbing up anyway, and then that causing the board to break and then to fall to the lower level. So when we think about conditions, this can be just the general environment where you're working, and then think about behaviors, acts. Is something that's prevented with training and just being smart, recognizing when something's unsafe, and then not going and doing that anyway, even if it's unsafe. So yeah, conditions, physical environment that could present a danger, any dangerous equipment, location, process, atmosphere, etc. Sometimes these are unavoidable if it's necessary that you have employees that work at heights. That's going to be just an unsafe condition. There's something you really can't avoid. Things that we can do to prevent that from being a greater hazard. But yeah, just working at heights, it's automatically just an unsafe condition. And the behaviors, something done that results in an injury or accident, and then we want to try to prevent these with training, proper PPE, and just being smart, focusing on what we're doing, not rushing. And so the last thing that can cause accidents is things can just happen. Some things we can't predict, some things we cannot get around, unfortunately. But we want to try to make an environment as safe as possible and try to avoid these chance occurrences the best we can. So we're going to look at a few pictures just about unsafe conditions or unsafe behaviors. Just think about which one of these might be. So in this image, workers working on the side of a house on scaffolding. Just think, is this an unsafe condition or unsafe behavior? Let's say generally this is both. Like I said, working at heights, unsafe condition automatically. You are in an unsafe work environment. If you fall, it's going to be dangerous. But then also unsafe behavior here. They didn't set their scaffolding up correctly. They are increasing their exposure to a fall hazard by not having guardrails, poorly planked scaffolding, using ladders on top of it. So this is an example of both, and something that can be prevented with training, just better employee behavior, and taking better precautions. So in this example, forklift has driven off the side of a loading ramp. It's unsafe condition or unsafe behavior. I don't know if this is a real picture, but this forklift is carrying what looks like to be some kind of bomb, weapon, something like that. So if that's what they're making, transporting, that makes it an unsafe condition. Just transporting dangerous materials. But then probably unsafe behavior, maybe poorly trained forklift driver, not paying attention to where he's going, driving off the side of the edge there. All right, and then this example looks like workers doing confined space rescue in a manhole. Going down into a confined space, poor atmosphere, hard to escape. That's just an unsafe condition. I don't think this is an example of unsafe behavior because it looks like they are well set up. They've got the proper PPE, fall protection, the hoist set up there. So sometimes we just have to work in unsafe environments, and we want to do the best we can to prevent making that more hazardous and doing the proper precautions. And then the last one here, unsafe condition or unsafe behavior, worker on the side of construction or tear down maybe. Again, working at heights, unsafe condition, just automatically unsafe environment. It's hard to tell if he's doing the proper things. He has a harness on, can't see really if it's connected. So we want to make sure people have the correct training and are mitigating the hazard from working in these unsafe conditions. So here's an example of a slip, wet floor, employee not paying attention to the signs, slips on the wet floor. So that's something we want to try to avoid here. All right, so moving forward to a workplace environment. When it comes to slips, trips, and falls, two general main factors that can make slipping, tripping, and falling more likely to happen. That's going to be visibility and traction. So for visibility, if we can't see where we're going, can't see what's in our way, more likely to trip, more likely to run into something and have a fall. And then traction, if you've got wet, slippery surfaces beneath you, it's just going to make it more likely to slip. So we want to focus on those two things when we think about slips and trips. So for our aisleways, points of travel, any kind of exit areas, work areas, we want to make sure that's well lit. We want to avoid the stuff we see here, poorly lit warehousing aisles, and then offices. If you have employees that are going to be working in offices overnight, a lot of times you see automatic lights that come on. Don't want to have to rely on someone trying to find a light switch so they can see where they're going. So we want to make sure our working areas are well lit and employees can see where they're going, see what they're going to run into. One thing that can improve visibility on, a higher danger area like steps is highlighting the edges of the steps. Something with steps that people run into is just missing them, not paying attention. Hard to see your feet if you're walking, talking, but highlight the edges of the steps, makes it more visible, more noticeable when you're going to the next one. And then even greater point, people miss the bottom step or mistake it for the floor if they think they're already there and then trip on that last one. So, a good idea is to highlight the last level of the steps in a different color, a safety yellow, mark that one so people know once they hit that, they are on the last step and they are not at the floor yet, and maybe that'll help them not slip. Here's an example. Dark stairs, it'd be kind of hard to see in the dark where your step is, where the next step is. But then painting it with these edges with the yellow, that might make it a little easier, make people a little more aware of when they're taking the next step. Something we definitely want to avoid is a staircase like this. It's awful carpeting, makes it like an optical illusion. You cannot see when you're going to be taking your next step. So we want to be able to see where we're walking, clear defined between the next level. So if you have carpeting like this on your stairs, I definitely recommend getting rid of that. Outside on the curbs, sidewalks, highlight changes in elevation. So you see the speed bumps where they're, kind of where someone might be walking, paint those yellow. Just makes better awareness for when someone's going to be stepping over that. And then where your sidewalk, where the entrance is to the sidewalk, put these high skid or anti-skid mats. The dimpled surface makes it easier to step on, improves traction. You can see that they're changing elevation because of the bright yellow color as well. All right. So moving on to traction, the second element in slips, trips, and falls that we want to talk about in this section. So traction. If you have an area of your workplace that's going to be getting a lot of steam, grease, mist, that kind of thing accumulating on the floor, you want to make sure you have good ventilation to prevent that, get that out of there so it does not accumulate and make the floor slip. Entrances are a big place for this. If you have high traffic entrances, when it's wet, icy, they can get wet, water can accumulate there. So these kind of drain slip resistant mats are a good idea to have there. They provide extra traction, and then they also have these drain holes that will keep the water from accumulating. So something to consider there if you have high traffic entrances at your offices or workplaces. And then if you have any areas where water, does accumulate, you see this a lot in kitchens, any place where they do any kind of wet processes. These anti-fatigue, anti-skid resistant mats are a good idea to have. Water gets under them, adds an extra traction for your workers there. They're also anti-fatigue, so makes it easier for the workers to stand for a while, easier on their knees, ankles, hips, that kind of thing. Also, if you have these environments, slip-resistant shoes, good idea. So you see that a lot in kitchens, things like that. All right, back to stairs. Slip-resistant treading on stairs is a good idea to have as well, especially you have high traffic stairs where people are coming in and it's raining, things like that. These just give you a little more traction on the stairs, help prevent them to getting too slick if they're getting wet. So this is a good idea to have on your staircases. All right, so talk a little bit about complacency, doing the same job, how conditions can change over time. So in this first image here, so these are taken from a septic tank pumping company. So that's what this is, but this could apply to anyone who's working outside, anyone who has to travel around outside in all seasons. So first picture, he's got a nice walkway. He's carrying the hose, which maybe is a little bit of a trip hazard, but otherwise not too bad. Gentle slope, but conditions can change. And so here, these guys are doing the exact same job, still got the hose, but now it is pouring the rain, they're in long grass, and it's wet. So that's going to make doing this a lot more dangerous, a lot more likely to slip. And then last one, in the winter, again, same job, doing the same work, but now there's going to be ice, snow, a lot more likely to slip here. So the point of these is just you'll have workers doing the same job every day, but conditions can change. So you want to be aware of what kind of conditions you're in and how that's going to change the potential hazards you have. Weather is a big thing for slips, trips, and falls. Rain, snow are just going to make that way more likely to happen. So if you have people working out like this, make sure they have good footwear on, They're aware of the conditions and just are a little more careful when these slippery conditions do exist. So with that, footwear, big thing for improving traction. Depends on the kind of job they're doing, what kind of footwear they need. You want to avoid something that's going to make it more slick, like ice skates. So that's not a good idea. But slip-resistant shoes, if they're working inside in a wet environment or greasy environment. Extra traction on shoes if they're outside, especially in ice. So those are things to consider, especially with winter coming out. If you have people working outside doing snow clearing, maybe get those almost like cleats you can put on the bottom of the boots that help them add traction. Or, just make sure their boots and soles are good and it's not going to be a greater hazard with worn out soles, slippery soles. Ice skates not slip resistant. So shoe selection, good thing to consider. Here's just a brief table about the type of soles on shoes and what they are best for. If you're considering getting shoes, different shoes for your employees, you can contact a footwear manufacturer or supplier, and they're going to give you the best advice on what they recommend. But just generally, it should fit snugly, comfortably, have good slip-resistant tread, and you want to make sure employees are keeping their footwear clean. If you have good tread, but you're keeping a lot of mud, accumulating a lot of mud, and not getting that out of there, it's going to kind of defeat the purpose of the tread. So that's something to consider with your employees who work outside, work in mud, dirt. Yeah, just keep that in mind. All right, so we will go on to general requirements and housekeeping. So OSHA general requirements, surface conditions, they must be clean, orderly, and sanitary. Wet processes must maintain drainage and a dry standing work area, and generally floor should be free of hazards. So if you have a wet area, again, you want false floors, raised platforms, mats to help maintain that dry standing area, get that water to go underneath where the employees are standing. Make sure your workplaces are clean and orderly, sanitary. Any kind of aisleways, walkways, need to have things kept out of the way of them. They need to be clear. Yeah, keep it free of hazards. So general requirement again, capable, your flooring must be capable of supporting the maximum intended load of the surface, and a safe means of access and egress must be available from each walk-in working surfaces. So if you have raised platforms, raised storage areas, do not want to overload them. You're not required to post the actual load rating anymore, but it is something to keep in mind. You should know it, and you should not overload it and make that a hazard. And then, any area where people walk or where people are working, there must be clear aisleways and means of egress between them. So any walking working surfaces must be inspected, maintained, and repaired. So need to be inspected regularly as necessary and maintained in safe condition. Best thing to do, just once a month, once a quarter, walk your floors, make sure everything looks good. You don't have cracks, holes appearing in your sidewalks or flooring. Your stairs aren't getting damaged, crumbling a little bit. Your railings is still in good place. If these hazardous conditions exist and you see them, they must be corrected and are repaired before employees can use them. While they're getting repaired, you need to guard them to prevent employee use. And if it involves the structural integrity of the surface, so especially something at heights, you have to have a qualified person perform and supervise the repair. So we're thinking engineer there to make sure that the structure gets back to how it should be. All right, so some housekeeping items to think about. Rugs, carpets, mats, they need to be kept flat and not bunched up. You can anchor these skid-resistant backing or carpet tape if this is an issue where they keep bunching up and rolling up and creating that trip hazard. And then workspaces, keep drawers and doors closed after use. Don't leave them sticking out into the aisleway or people are going to run into them, bump and potentially trip. And then you want to keep floors free of boxes, cords, cables, materials, and other objects. See this a lot, and especially in office environments, of cables and cords going across aisleways. Something really to try to avoid. Sometimes it is unavoidable. So if you do have to run cables across the flooring, best case is to use these cord covering mats. Just keep everything tucked away because those cords can very easily loop up and cause someone to trip over them. Also, these mats will help protect your cords. Try to avoid the electrical hazard there of damaging electrical cords. So those are a good practice and best to use if you have the situation where you do need to run cords across the floor. All right. So a few more general housekeeping items here. If there's spills, they need to be cleaned up immediately. Don't just leave water, drinks, coffee, spilled coffee laying on the floor. If you do the spill yourself, report it to someone or just go clean it yourself. If flooring's damaged, it needs to be repaired immediately. And cone or block off areas that are wet or under repair until they are back to their normal condition before you will allow people to walk back through the area. So have your wet floor signs, use those, mark the areas that are wet, being cleaned, cone off areas that are being repaired. One thing with these, be careful not to overuse them. You want them to there to be a condition there when they're there so people don't get used to it and just say, oh, that sign's always there, just walk through this anyway. And then, then that time it actually is wet and then they slip. So use them when the floor's wet. Pick them up after. Don't just leave them laying out. All right. Briefly talk about exit ways, what to look for, keeping those clear. Definitely one of the more important aspects. In case of emergency, you do not want to have stuff out in the middle of the aisleways. That's going to delay people exiting the building if there's something like a fire or something. So what to look for in exit ways, avoid blocked exits and exit paths. Your doors must be able to open from the inside when employees are in the building, so you cannot lock them, bar the doors, anything like that. Excuse me. Exits must be properly marked. So exit signs, check and make sure they still light up. Your doors are marked. If a door could be confused for an exit, put a not exit sign on it or put a sign that communicates what that door is. And then avoid any tripping or other hazards along the route. So you want to keep those exit pathways clear and prevent objects from just accumulating in the pathway. And last point here, make sure employees understand your emergency action plan. Make sure they know where to go if in the event of an emergency, where their exit is, who's going to be accounting for them, and who's going to be communicating that the emergency is occurring to the emergency response. Just make sure everyone understands what the plan is in the event of an emergency. So try to avoid storing equipment in any of your exit routes, including temporary storage. You don't know when an emergency is going to happen, but you don't want it to be the day you have moved a bunch of stuff in front of your door and you have to clear everything out while an emergency event's occurring. So pathways must always be clear. You don't want to have people have to climb or jump or move things to try to get out of the exit doors. So just something to consider. Keep this on a checklist. Check these, frequently, monthly, something like that. So the hazard here, again, doors blocked from the inside. It's barred with that 2x4 on it. So if there is an emergency, someone's gonna have to figure out how to move that. It looks like it's secured there pretty good, so that could be a real issue if there's a fire. Exit sign there above the door, that should be illuminated. You can use glow-in-the-dark ones, but it should be able to be visible if the lights are out or nighttime. Again, exits just must remain unlocked from the inside at all times when employees are in the building. So no deadbolts, no securing the doors. It should only take one motion to open the door, so you shouldn't have to fiddle with a deadbolt or use a key, use any kind of special tool to get that door open. We recommend these for doors, push bars, panic bars. You can lock them from the outside, but you can just use one motion to get through there, and they stay unlocked from the inside. Check your exit signs frequently. They must illuminate. Make sure that backup battery works. You can use glow-in-the-dark ones, but that, again, does need to be visible at night or when the lights are off. Talk briefly on fire extinguishers here. Keep these clear. Again, just general housekeeping. Don't block your fire extinguishers off. If someone needs to get to it, they shouldn't have to climb over, risk tripping, falling over objects in the path. Should just be able to easily, readily access that. So yeah, just to avoid storing a bunch of material in front of them. Just something to keep in mind when considering housekeeping items. And you want to make sure they're mounted and labeled, so don't want to have to bend over, pick that up off the floor. You should just be able to grab it right off the wall, and should be labeled, identified some way, so they can be seen in the event of emergency. All right. So I'll wrap this section up with just a few pictures, a few hazards. Here, looks like a coffee spill in front of the snack machine, drink area. So someone spilled this, just left it. That happens. Just clean up after yourself, or if you need someone to clean up, go get the mop and stuff, let someone know. Mark this kind of area off while that's still wet. Get stuff out of your aisleways, especially if you have your aisleways marked like this. Keep it clear, and then they've just left the pallet here. So marking your aisleways is a good idea, but if you're still just going to stack stuff up in them, it's kind of defeats the purpose. So make sure to keep your aisleways clear, keep objects out of the walking path that employees will travel.
That would
Inspect your flooring. So you see like this in a garage here, that's flooring's kind of decayed there. That's a really slick surface appearing now.
all right. Well,
That's going to be a greater hazard for slipping there. So working
Zach,
at
we lost
heights.
your audio. There we go. We
Oh,
lost
am I
your
good?
audio for a second. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So anytime you have employees working at heights on unprotected or exposed edge, any other area with the walking working surfaces, you must protect employees from falling to the lower level. So if you have these kind of areas, we want to see guardrails there, full guardrail system. We'll talk about what that includes. So guardrail system includes a top rail, mid rail, and post. So your top rail must be 42 inches minimum. There's a leeway of 3 inches there. Mid rail right in the middle at 21 inches. And then if you have people working above or at that level and then below that level, or you're storing things up there, put a toe board up to prevent things from falling off that edge onto people below. And that needs to be 3.5 inches high, maximum of 1/4 an inch clearance from the floor. So if you have these unprotected edges in any of your workplaces, make sure these guardrails are up. Like again, that's Falling from heights like this is going to cause a much serious injury. A little easier to prevent because we can put guardrails up, have those in place, make sure they are, up to snuff. They're strong enough to prevent someone from going through them. But it's something we want to make sure we have because falling from a height like this can be pretty nasty, can cause serious injury, even death. So check these areas in your workplace, make sure they are safe. So just an image of an unprotected side or edge here, looking over a work area below. So full guardrail, toe board, that needs to be in place there. Another thing that you might want to guard off, or you should guard off, is if you have dangerous equipment below you in the floor. This isn't as common. I'm not sure you guys would run into this, but if you have something that employees could fall into on the floor or just below them, that needs to be guarded as well. Guardrail system, same kind of deal. All right, stairs. So standard stair railings are required for any staircase or stairway that has 4 or more risers. So 4 or more steps on it, you do have to have a stair rail system in place. Again, want to make sure your treads are slip resistant, uniform rise height and thread width. So that just makes it more predictable when the next steps come in, helps prevent the tripping or slipping from the step. So fixed stairs should be able to carry 5 times the anticipated load, 1,000 pounds minimum. Minimum width stairs, 22 inches. So if you have any old staircases in your facilities, make sure they're still can hold that anticipated load, and they're, still up to code. If you have stairs like this that have been damaged, worn out, they just need to be replaced. Should not allow employees to access those when they're damaged like that, no guardrail. So make sure, just inspect these kind of areas every year or so, make sure they're still good. Not something that's going to deteriorate overnight, but could slip through the cracks. Kind of thing you want to look out for, on the left here, the rail system's kind of deteriorated. It's not really going to support anyone. It's actually going to put weight on it. Might actually be more dangerous than it is helpful. So block that off, get that railing fixed. Don't let anyone use it until it's corrected. Just put new railing on. Stairs enclosed by 2 walls like this must also have a handrail on it. Also, again, these are in pretty bad shape, so want to make sure those are repaired. Something like this, also avoid. Stairs are starting to crumble, so get that fixed. Need the stair rail on the left side of these stairs and then a handrail on the inside wall. But yeah, check these, make sure they're still all in safe condition. Excuse me. All right, ladders. Speed up here a little bit. So portable ladders need to be inspected before each use. You want to have your rungs and steps, make sure they're skid resistant. Employees are going to have good grip when using them. Make sure they are equipped with a spreader or locking device so they do not slip once they're in use. Do not load them beyond the maximum intended load. So should be printed on the ladder somewhere what the intended load is. Make sure that the the equipment they're using, that's not going to go over that intended load. And then when using them, make sure they are set on a stable, level surface, unless they're secured or stabilized. So portable ladders, don't move or shift or extend the ladder with anyone on it. Set it up, work on it. If you need to move it, get that employee to come down and then move it. It's kind of common sense there, but be surprised. If you're doing work in a high traffic area with a ladder, make sure to block that off so any kind of walking traffic through there isn't going to interfere with the work, bumping the ladder. Also, you don't want people dropping tools or equipment down on people walking below, so create a good clearance there so that people can get the work done and people walking beneath can be safe and not have stuff falling on their heads. Top of the ladder, the cap, and then the top step of the ladder, these are not to be used to stand on. You want to get to that second to last rung. That's as far as you want to go. Sometimes, you need a little more height. Make sure your employees know, do not get on the top of that. Just go get a taller ladder or a different piece of equipment to reach that height. Portable ladders, extension ladders, they must extend 3 feet beyond the point of support or the next level. Inspect your ladders before use. Make sure there's not loose, broken extension locks. The fiberglass is still good, not cracks or any kind of damage showing on those. Each rung is still intact. If they're slip resistant on it, make sure that tread's still good. If you see some defects on the ladders, just tag it out, mark it dangerous, do not use, and generally just throw it away. And you want to avoid using ladders in a horizontal position as scaffolds or work platforms. It's not what they're intended for. Just want to use them for their intended purpose. So another point on this picture, that's like an A-frame ladder that they're using as an extension ladder. Don't want to do that. Use the correct ladder for the job you're doing. So if you need something like this, go get an actual extension ladder and use it. Don't use that A-frame ladder leaned up like that. So for fixed ladders, if you have any of these in your facilities, again, must be capable of supporting the intended load. Minimal perpendicular distance from center of rungs to the nearest permanent object on the back of the ladder is 7 inches. So you need that full clearance to get your foot against in the ladder. You're not running into the wall. And then rungs should be spaced no more than 18 inches. Side rails on fixed ladders should extend 42 inches above the top of the access level or landing platform. And then these should never be pitched greater than 90 degrees. Okay, something that's been changed in the last few years here. For fixed ladders that are greater than 24 feet, you used to have a fall arrest system, ladder safety system, cage, well, or cage or well. So that's anything that was installed before 2018. They've gone away from just having the cage or well system. So anything that's going to be installed after 2018, or that's been replaced, upgraded, fixed, anything like that, now it needs to have the personal fall arrest system or the ladder safety system. And then all these ladders that are greater than 24 feet, they need to be updated by 2036 to include that fall arrest system. So what I'm talking about with that is just this general kind of railing in the middle that's going to be able to hook a fall harness into. And these should allow the employee to climb up and down the ladder safely using both hands and does not interfere with the employee climbing the ladder. The employee shouldn't have to hold, push, or use anything while climbing it, so that railing should just automatically go up and down. The connection between the carrier and lifeline should not exceed 9 inches, and the design and installation should not reduce the strength of the ladder, and it should be capable of withstanding a drop test of 18 inches of a 500-pound weight. So this is something you'd have someone come out and install if you do have these ladders in your facility. If you're updating them or doing any repairs to them, then that needs to be added now. Otherwise, you have until 2036 to do that. So with fixed ladders, one section fixed ladder is equipped with a personal foul protection or ladder safety system. The employer must ensure that it does extend through the entire vertical distance of the ladder. And if you have them really long ladders, you need to breast platforms every 150 feet. Cages or wells, they must be offset from adjacent sections. Have landing platforms every 50 feet if you have the cage or well systems. They can be used in combination with the personal fall arrest system, provided that the cage does not interfere in any way with that system. Just a few pictures here, ladders being used improperly, some things to avoid. So here, he's got this in a truck bed, it looks like, or on the truck. You want to avoid doing that, put that on the ground, stable surface. Make sure you have good footing for your ladder. Employees should always face the ladder when working. You don't want to be setting up like this and then turning around to try to do something behind you. Going to make it more likely that you're going to fall while working. So probably just use a different ladder for whatever job he's trying to do here. Again, avoid using the top step of the ladder. If you need extra height, different ladder. Don't want to go up there. You're much more likely to fall, and it's a dangerous fall there. And avoid using the cap of the ladder as a step as well. Another example of that, this one is pretty sketchy. You got two people on that ladder. It's set up on grass. He's on that cap there, pretty high up, working on that light. If he falls there, especially falling on that pavement, then good chance it could kill him there. So make sure your employees are aware of that and avoid that. Anyone who's working on ladders, just train them on the proper way to do that. Don't want to be doing stuff like this either. Stable footing. Don't hang those ladders over just an open surface there, or open area there. And make sure they're supported well. Don't want to rely on your buddy to push you on one side and pull you from the other. Don't know if he's going to be able to catch him if that falls. Yeah, don't get your employees not to do things like this. Make sure they're setting them up on a good location. This one is pretty safe. He's got 3 points of contact while working. Maybe you want to check the maximum load there, but I think this is pretty good here. All right, a couple more points here. So using extension ladders, horizontal distance from the top of the support to the foot of the ladder should be 1/4 of the working length of the ladder. That's a lot to think about, but basically that's keeping that angle good. You're not climbing too high or too low. Rule of thumb for this, put your foot at the base of the ladder, reach out, and if you can touch the ladder, you're generally good. So you want a 4-to-1 ratio. Every 4 feet the ladder goes up in height, it should be 1 foot away from the base. Make sure your footing's secured and on an even surface. Avoid things like this, uneven surfaces, gonna make that ladder wobbly and just increase the likelihood that you're gonna fall off there. All right, climbing and descending ladders. Make sure your footwear is clean, clear of mud. That's gonna reduce your traction. Make sure the rungs are clean, don't have mud, grease on them. Gonna reduce your traction as well, and you have a good handhold. So for good handhold, don't want to be carrying things in your hand while climbing them. You need to maintain that 3 points of contact. If you have to carry tools up, use a tool belt, bag, have someone hand it up to you later. Face the ladder when climbing it, and then when coming down, don't jump off the ladder. Make sure your employees know that. That's, especially once you get older, you think you can still jump down, but then you're going to hurt your knee, hurt your ankle. Just climb down it regular, normal way. All right, go through these real quick here. Any kind of heavy equipment, tall trucks, machinery, things like that, kind of want to consider these like ladders. So use the same kind of rules there. So make sure that if it's wet, rainy, there's dirt, oil, or grease on the steps there, clear that off. Make sure it's not on your shoes as well. Make sure the running boards, the treads are clear, good traction still there. Put your foot on the step or foothold and just in front of the heel of the arch, under the ball of your foot, really. Have a good handhold before stepping up, face equipment when mounting or dismounting. So just like a ladder, climb it facing it, and make sure everything is clear of dirt, grease, and that kind of stuff. 3 points of contact until you reach the ground or the cab. Don't jump out of the cab, just step down, climb out normally. All right, safe practices and last little bit here. All right, so just walking, general rules, general things to avoid. Don't be reading, writing, looking at your phone while you're walking. Pay attention to where you're going. That's the only way you're going to see if there's something in your way, the floor's wet, things like that. When climbing descending stairs, use handrails. Don't rush or skip steps. Just take it easy. Don't jump down. Don't run, especially on steps, and pay attention to where you're going. When carrying loads, especially if they prohibit you from seeing your feet, make it harder to see. Try to avoid taking the steps, especially if they're going to interfere with the way you move your legs. You have to walk different because it's so large. Use an elevator if you can. Put the load on a dolly. If you can't see around you, you can't see where you're going, you can't see who you're going to run into or what you're going to run into. So just train your employees to avoid doing that. Maybe you need to two-man the load just to be safer. Yeah, don't stack up materials to try to access something. Get a step ladder or just a ladder to do that. Avoid climbing up on chairs, especially rolling chairs. Yeah, this kind of thing. Avoid stacking up boxes to try to get to a higher level. All right, with winter coming up, that's definitely something to consider. Last year, we had a ton of ice and snow, so something to think about. When there's ice and snow present, make sure you're wearing appropriate footwear for winter walking. Slow down, be more aware of your surroundings, take your time. You generally want to walk a little bit slower, short steps, walk on the clearest path available. Use salt to melt ice away or clear it out. Employers are responsible for their sidewalks, parking lots, getting rid of ice accumulation, or just closing that area if ice is accumulating and you're not able to remove it at the time. So when you're entering the buildings, knock off as much snow as you can from your boots or shoes. You don't want that to melt and then cause a slip hazard right there at the entrance. And yeah, I would just be aware of that on snowy days, that can happen, and have someone there to clean that up, dry it up a little bit. Place it with temporary warning sign in the entranceway that it's going to be slick. Place signs outside where there might be black ice or snow accumulation and you're not able to clear it. All right. So if you must walk on slippery, wet surfaces, first thing you want to do is make sure you're wearing high traction footwear. You've got good tread on your shoes, especially good if the shoe is designed for that situation. Use rails or other objects that you can hold on to support yourself. Take short, slow steps. Say the best thing to do walking on snow or ice is walk like a penguin. Point your feet out. Short steps. Just shuffle a little bit. Lower your center of gravity, and then learn how to fall. So, last year, falling down right. We want to avoid falling, but if you do fall, some tips to keep in mind when that fall happens. I know it's quick reaction thing, and you're probably not going to think about this, but maybe if you go over it, it'll stick in your head. You want to roll with the fall. Don't reach out and try to catch yourself. Bend your elbows and knees. Use your legs and arms to absorb the fall. Try to protect your head, neck, and spine area. And if you're injured, seek medical attention. So definitely something to avoid is trying to reach out, catch yourself. That's how you're going to break your ankle or your wrist, your fingers. Try to pull your arms in, just hit with your shoulders. That's going to be the lowest impact for you. Wrist will break easily, just falling, trying to catch all your body weight and that momentum. All right, just a few things to wrap up here. Good rule of thumb, drop it, pick it up. Don't leave stuff in the middle of the floor. Spill something, wipe it up. Don't just lay a mess there and let someone else step in it and fall. Go where you're looking and look where you're going. Just a little poster here that goes over the main things we talked about today. Don't walk in dark areas. Make sure your lighting's good. Be aware your path is clear, or be sure your path is clear. Make sure there's nothing in the area that you're going to trip or slip on. Don't block your view. Make sure you have good vision. You're not holding something that prevents you from seeing where you're going. Watch out for wet weather, slippery surfaces. Use safety rails and handrails when climbing steps. Avoid walking or running. Don't go too fast. Wear slip-resistant shoes if you need them, and just avoid hazards the best you can. There's a video here, but we're running a little long, so I'm just going to skip it. All right, so we'll wrap up here. Just a few pictures, some kind of hazards we see. Sidewalk, it's deteriorating. Pretty good trip hazard there. You'd be stepping into a lower surface grass. So if you have areas like this, you want to block them off, get that repaired. Don't let anyone access those until they're repaired. Here, cord coming out of the floor, sticking out into the working area. Try to avoid this if you can. Cover that up if you can avoid it. But that is a live wire, and it's going to, roll up a little bit, catch someone walking. Steps, make sure you have a handrail system on them. If there's 4 or more risers, yeah, don't want to just have unprotected edges there. Again, cords out in the middle of the walking area, going right to that exit door as well. So that's going to be an emergency exit pathway. Clean those up, put them up when you're done using them. Yeah, and if you have to leave them out there, try to put something over them. That's going to make them less likely to cause you to trip. Any holes in your flooring, those need to be covered with a secure covering or guarded off guardrails. So check your workplaces for that kind of thing and correct them if you do find them. And make sure your visibility is good. Go through that exit door and you don't know where you're going. So make sure your exit routes are well lit. Generally, your workplace is well lit. Avoid leaving things sticking out into your exit routes or any kind of walking areas like that is sticking out there. And then, yeah, again, steps. Make sure you have a full, good guardrail system. I don't know if I would trust that one. And then this is the edge of a building. Again, make sure your guardrails are there if people are going to be working up there at any height that's greater than 4 feet. Avoid leaving messes of cords laid up like this. That's just asking for someone to step in and trip on it. So clean up your cords, roll them up when you're done, store them somewhere safe. It's also going to damage your cords if people are stepping on it, equipment moving through there as well. These little things, the packing straps, throw those away when you're done using them. Don't leave them out on the floor. Those will definitely grab your foot and take you down. And hoses, things like that. Again, just get those out of the workplace, walking area. Clean that up. All right, so that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? All right, well, thank you all. Here's contact information. If you do have any questions later, send me an email, give me a call. I'll be happy to get back with you on that. Otherwise, thank you all for having me out. Appreciate it.